This is Mommying While Muslim, recorded live and unedited. Watch as Zeba and Uzma record their podcast, see their reactions, and find out for yourself what all the buzz is about.
Hello, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. This is a special episode of Mommying While Muslim. I'm getting adjusted. I'm on my porch because we have a house full of people. I actually wanted to say my parents and my brother just left, and I think they're watching right now. And I miss you so much, and my nieces and nephews. So I wanted to say that right now. But phase 2 is opening here in the DMV area, and I've had a lot of questions and concerns from a lot of my momming friends about like what to do, how to handle things. Like my son doesn't want to go to a practice, doesn't want to actually meet his friends, or they do, and they're having some effects. And we thought, why not get some of our experts in the field and try to figure out what's the best way of kind of going slowly back to reality. The funny thing is I'm literally just coming back from a COVID birthday party where there was a dunk tank and the kids got to dunk the birthday boy. So you know what? We are adjusting and figuring out like different ways of getting around some of these types of super strict restrictions and allowing our kids the opportunity to be kids. So I am very, very fortunate to have my co-host, by the way, is getting a much needed rest, Uzma Jaffrey. Hopefully she's watching from her bed somewhere because quite frankly, this girl has been working nonstop. So I'm happy to send so I'm super happy to know that she's resting. But I am blessed to have our resident expert, Saba Maroof, Dr. Saba Maroof, here joining us today. She is a psychiatrist in the Detroit area, and she handles a lot of PTSD and anxiety for kids. And we definitely need her point of view and perspective because I have a couple of anxious children as well. I wanted to introduce Dr. Sadia Moinuddin. She is a board-certified internal medicine hospitalist that practices in Southern California, and Dr. Aisha Beg, who is, this is her self-described, she's a changer of diapers and a wiper of boogers, and we have all been there, girls. So thank you so much for joining us. And I believe Sadia is even in between rounds right now. So on the front lines, and I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for joining us today on this special episode and kind of giving our listeners and our viewers an insight into what we should be expecting as things starts opening up in our states. Thank you guys and welcome to Mommying While Muslim.
Thank you, Zeba, for having us today.
Thank you, Zeba.
Sorry, there might be a lag. There might be a lag because that
started?
tends to happen when we're live. But we're just going to jump right into it because I actually posted in a lot of my mothering website, mothering groups, and I got like so many questions that I know I myself have. So I first of all wanted to address the difference between coronavirus and COVID-19 because I don't think people understand the vernacular and the vocabulary. So can we just start off this special right now? Like, what is the difference? And please inform us. So either Muna or Sadia, do you mind taking that question?
Sure. COVID-19. COVID-19 is the name of the disease that's caused by the coronavirus. Yeah, go ahead, Muna. I think there was a delay, and I was like, "Is Muna?" Go ahead, Muna.
No, there was a delay. Please go ahead.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So just COVID-19 is just the name of the disease. Okay. Gosh.
I think
there's a little bit of a delay. So Dr. Sadia, since you're yeah, exactly. No, you tell me what is the difference. I'm just going to start because we do have a lag because there's 4 of us on here, and I think there's a lot of people watching. So Sadia, you tell me what's the difference between coronavirus and COVID-19.
So COVID-19 is the name of the disease caused by the virus. It's the novel coronavirus from the family of coronavirus. MERS and SARS, CoV initially also came from the same family. So it's caused by the virus called SARS-CoV-2, and it causes the disease COVID-19. So it's a large family of viruses. You know, it's also, you have common cold to severe illnesses leading up to MERS or severe acute respiratory syndrome. And so it's COVID-19.
And it's not because
the
it was
new
2019.
novel coronavirus. Yeah.
Correct. Got it. Perfect.
It is because of the 2019. Yeah.
Got it. So, Muna, could you let us know a little bit about like what are you hearing the social guidelines, the updated social guidelines? Because I'm hearing mixed things. I'm still hearing, the 6 feet, but outdoors is safe. You can, like what are the things that we can do? One, that it's summer and it's nice outside, right? And two, that we can kind of get out safely from our houses. Like what are the guidelines that you're recommending for people to actually employ as they're starting to open the doors and get out a little bit?
I think you bring up a really good point. Sorry, are you guys able to hear me? Fully okay? So
Yes.
as we progress into the summer, the warmer months, there is the way that I see it about it is two different parts. What is the virus doing and what are humans doing? And they're not necessarily correlating to the same thing. So the most important aspect, I think, is always staying up to date with all of the CDC guidelines, staying up to date with the John Hopkins and CDC posts very regularly about what the cases are doing per county, which is very helpful. And always remembering that a lot of those stats, the death toll is what lags. So the hospitalization rates, the case reports, and the number of positives, those have been increasing, although our testing also finally is increasing. And so are we just capturing those numbers that were already there? So I think looking at a lot of those peaks, those curves, that's been really important for us as physicians, and then also as parents. So when you're looking at, it's warm outside, my kid's school is finally out, what are we doing now to interact with humans? I think the basics that we're really still trying to encourage people is cloth face covering. So, if I have my mouth covered and someone else doesn't, that's probably not going to be the best setup. If I have my mouth covered and the nose covered and they also do too, probably putting us at the safest of interaction points. And then hand washing, using hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol. And remember, this is a person-to-person spread virus. So there is a lot of data out there that, in terms of it's not like foodborne, but it does survive on like plastic for up to 3 days or so. So you have to just keep in mind keeping things clean. So that's I think the bare minimum.
So you're making so this is for a selfish question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Muna or Sadia.
I will let you finish the question, but I was just adding on to going out and doing activities with your kids and your family, just like Muna said, wearing a mask, hand hygiene, and also keeping up with the distance. So 6 feet is a minimum distance that, we should be aiming for when we're outside. And if that's not possible, then definitely face covering is very important. And that is with everybody that does not live in the same house as you.
Got it. So what do you do? Like there are certain places here that pools and stuff are opening. What do you guys suggest about that? Like going to your local pool or going to your local beach vacation? Like that's a big thing here in this area. How do you guys feel about that? Because it kind of makes me feel a little bit nervous.
So there is
Sadia actually has a lot of
there is no data to. Oh, go ahead.
No,
okay,
sorry,
so there's
we're in such
no
a lab
data
right now.
or evidence that there is. Oh my gosh, sorry. Okay.
Sorry.
Sadia, you go, girl.
Basically, I'm going. Okay, so we don't have any evidence to date that there is a transmission in the pool. So when you're going out and you have so of course, any activity that you're going to be doing, there's always going to be a risk. There's no activity that's at 0%. So you just have to weigh out your risks of exposure. So if you go to somebody's house and if it's a pool at someone's house, so then you want to be, with the minimal number of people that you can have. And then when you're, of course, in the water, you're not going to have the mask. But when you're outside the pool, the kids tend to congregate, and then there's food. So just making sure that you're keeping the distance when you're outside the pool, and sanitizing before you eat. When you bring snacks, you bring your own snacks, bring your own towels. So there's minimum, I guess, items that you're sharing with other people. But like I said, there's always going to be a risk, and you deciding what is the amount of risk you're willing to take.
That's actually a good point, because that was one of the major questions we have, right? Like, it's how do we kind of go back into society slowly without causing a lot of extra anxiety for our children. And I know we're going to speak on the anxiety part, and I'm going to bring Saba into it, but I actually had some more medical questions before I wrote Saba in for her medical expertise for my own mental peace. But the one thing that I wanted to say is, a lot of kids are going back to practices. I mean, I literally got a text while I'm on live right now that one of my sons are starting baseball practice, and obviously we had to sign a waiver in order to start practice. He's, as much as he loves baseball, is a little bit nervous about it. Like, what are the things and the steps that parents can take if they've decided, okay, for my own sanity, my son is going to start baseball? What are the things that we can do to kind of ensure their safety as they're slowly starting sports and things like that? So I think, Sadia, you answered the pool question. So maybe Muna can answer the sports question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, please.
So
yes, please. Go ahead,
hopefully
Muna.
you guys can hear me on this. Sorry about the lag. Essentially, so one step so we did, first of all, shelter in place. We've done this. We know that it was effective. We know that it has significantly decreased the amount of cases, and that's something to celebrate. Now, going into it, I think it's just making sure that we're not going from like 0 to 60. One kind of baby step that's been approached, and something specifically from Alameda County guidelines that has come up, is a recommendation of what's called social bubbles or social spheres, like whatever you want to call them. So it's the idea of a group that is, 12 or fewer people that basically you're socializing with, that is a consistent bubble. So maybe my household and one other household, and we are a bubble together. And we are, maintaining our social distance and hand hygiene and masks, but we're maintaining our regular social activities outside in a safer area. So if we're doing like a picnic, or if we're doing, meeting at a local park on the grass and things like that, that allow the kids to still have their social activity and some semblance of social life without having necessarily jumped straight back in to an in-person sitting school life. And the one recommendation on this is you have to keep in mind what is the your high risk factors. So do you have an immunocompromised person? Do you have a high risk person, like a healthcare worker in either of these bubbles? But keeping those kind of caveats in mind, I feel like this is like a good transition way for families to come back out into the world.
That's actually really interesting. And the other thing that I wanted to ask, because obviously for selfish reasons, like, with a lot of the protests and the rallies going on in a lot of our areas, right? Like, we're being exposed, but these types of things are important to us from a social perspective. Specifically talking about the Black Lives Movement. How do we, if somebody wants to support this cause and wants to be a part of the protest, what are the things that we can kind of put in? Because, by the way, it's not going away anytime soon. What are the things that we can do to kind of protect ourselves and still participate in a safe way? Because that was one of the main questions that I've been receiving.
Muna, do you want me to go?
I'm going to direct that to Sadia.
So,
yes, let's direct it to Sadia.
Okay. So obviously, so some things that I did read, there's some guidelines that I did see, like when you're out protesting, how to do it safely, having hand sanitizer, and maybe go with a group of people that are going to be around you like the whole time. So then you have like that small group of people that when you're protesting outside, you're with that same group of people, of course, wearing face coverings and distance if you can maintain as much as possible. But, of course, the risk is there, especially when there's a lot of, people speaking in loud voices. And if there is some people that are not wearing the face covering. So, having some snacks and things with you and hand sanitizer, mask, and maybe a shield. And, just do it as safely as possible, given the circumstances. But, of course, there's, multiple ways to support the Black Lives Movement. So I think you have to take in, like, what are your risks?
I love
if you do get sick, how sick you're going to be. Go ahead, Muna.
Sorry, I know there's a lag, so I feel like if I start talking like a minute before, sometimes it works. There, like first and foremost,
Yeah.
I know that, I know my support lies with the Black Lives Matter initiative, and as we kind of go through, like, as a country, we're kind of at a crossroads now for like a place of overdue change. Personally, when this all started, we were really struggling with like a family. My kids are all both under 5. So I'm like, how are we going to basically participate and then also make them sort of aware? And we had an amazing thing in our community, where I had the joy of participating with a lot of the Muslim community here in Saratoga, in the city of Saratoga. There was a caravan protest, and it was organized specifically for families with younger children, for immunocompromised or immunosuppressed people to be able to participate. And it was like a caravan of 40 cars, like honking their horns, cars decorated, signs out, and doing like a 40 to 45-minute drive across the city, and cheering. That was, I thought, it was very uplifting. I thought it was a great way for otherwise families that might not have been able to come out to do so. Then that kind of brings me back to the other point of what she had just, what Sadia just mentioned. If you are going to be doing the ones that are actual physical protests, keeping in mind what your age groups are. Maybe not taking the kids that are younger that are probably not going to be able to comply with those rules, but the older kids, I think, they're the ones that, and I'm sure Saba will go into this about, what age groups can and cannot comply with all these rules probably.
So we actually have a question about, so I think it says, my problem is my screen doesn't quite show it. So if you are regularly protesting,
I can't read it either. Yeah.
Do you feel, yeah, I can't read it, but do you feel that you have to get tested? If you're regularly protesting and you've decided this is what I'm going to do to help support this particular movement, should we get tested on a regular basis? What are your suggestions for that? Sadia.
And the question is, by the way, sorry, do you think that you need to quarantine after a protest? Sorry.
Oh, quarantine. Sorry. Thank you, Saba, because I can't quite read it. Do you think protesters need to quarantine after protest or get tested if they're out every single day?
I do believe, reading lately about that, I don't know specifically the answer, but I do believe that you should get tested, especially if you've been out with a large group of people. And if you've been out regularly, then you're being exposed, as we have a lot of pre-symptomatic and asymptomatic carriers. So yes, I do recommend that they should get tested.
So another question that I've been hearing a lot of is, when can we go back to the gym? When can we go back to the gym, and can we go back to the gym, and is it safe to go back to the gym? What I know Sadia probably has a pretty specific answer for this, so maybe she can start it, and then Muna can finish that question.
I'll let you, Muna. Oh, I'll let Muna. Okay. So I read about a study that was in South Korea, and they had a lot of cases at different dance studios. So when you're at the gym, like, obviously, if they're able to follow certain guidelines in terms of, keeping the distance, wiping down the equipment. Personally, I know myself, I'm not going to be going to the gym because the risk, but some people do need it for their sanity. And in that case, you have to decide, what are their, how many people are they allowing? What is the capacity? How much time are they giving between the different classes? And so I think you have to take all those things into consideration. But of course, outdoor is better than indoor. If you want to do like some kind of CrossFit, some camp, boot camp, if it's outdoor, it's better than indoor. Muna, go ahead. Thanks to the lag, I started speaking.
No, yeah,
and then... Go ahead.
No, you hit it well. I think no, you hit it really well. I think the idea is, there's actually some studies out there that have been ranking certain activities by medium or low, moderate to high risk. And gyms are definitely in the higher risk category. And so I don't think that we're in a phased rollout process. Every kind of process moving forward is going to be like a smaller calculated decision based on your own specific family unit, what your healthcare exposures are and what your risk factors are. Like if you have an elderly person living in the home, and then they're going to be a much greater like shared decision making as a community. So what your governor is rolling out, like we're following phase 2 to 3 based on where we live in California. So at this point we're not there. We're not there.
Nope. No. Especially this week, in the last couple of weeks, we've been seeing the peak.
No gyms, ew.
Yep.
Uzma just wrote in and said, please, no gym, ew. She agrees. She agrees with you. No, I agree. I mean, and maybe this is an opportunity for people to be a little bit more, creative with what they want to do to stay fit and active, because I do think, and we'll get into this when we talk to Saba, that physical fitness, I think, is a key component for staying sane, mentally sane. And I'm sure she will agree with us because I know I have a couple of teenagers in the house, and they have been working out like crazy fiends, and I think it's their way of coping, and they're trying to get me in shape too. So it's a win-win for all of us. We're being creative. But the one thing I wanted to go into before moving on to the mental aspect of this is, what are some of the myths that we have about the coronavirus? I think Joe is going to put up some slides that you ladies had so nicely sent to us a little bit earlier. So if you, Sadia, or you, Muna, can speak to this, I would definitely appreciate this.
So I'm just going to go ahead because I can't see the other camera. So there is COVID-19 is a respiratory illness, and so it affects our pulmonary tract, affects the upper lower airways, causes respiratory distress syndrome, and puts people on ventilators. Unfortunately, the things that we're digesting, so as much turmeric as I want to throw at something, it's not going to make this go away. And as to my mom's,
no haldi, everybody,
upset,
no
but,
haldi. Exactly.
Yeah, there's only so much you can spray Windex at, for anyone who's seen that movie. But ultimately what we have to do is prevention is the best treatment for this disease. So not getting it is the best thing. So in terms of even other myths that are out there, this is not like a simple, some people have passed it as a simple cold, but for some people that has, we've seen people be on the ventilator. We've been seeing people be sick for 20 to 30 plus days. They get long-term sequelae of it. They can be have like cognitive impairments, and so we're still learning. We're actively learning about this disease every day. It's only found in 2019, where the syndrome that it causes is so vast that we're still kind of figuring out what the long-term sequelae are going to be. So I personally, in my personal opinion, have great respect for the disease, and I'm going to still continue to be mindful of it.
We can switch to the next slide, Joe. Yep, there we go.
So
Sadia, do you mind talking about the effectiveness of antibiotics?
Yeah, so since this is a virus, antibiotics are not going to be work for this disease. But if there is a co-infection that is bacterial, then you would use antibiotics. There's also, again, these slides I got from the WHO website, because I hear about these things a lot. And a lot of times, going back to the first slide when Muna was talking about the peppers and the turmeric, sometimes when people are doing those things, that can also give you a false sense of security where you can lax on your efforts to, stay away from the virus itself, because sometimes you can lax on like maybe not keeping up with the hygiene or wearing masks because, you're thinking that maybe the turmeric or maybe rinsing your nose with this warm saline is actually protecting you. So that could actually diminish your efforts that you were so good at putting up with. I don't know if I explained that well.
Yes.
Okay. Mona.
Next slide.
Coronavirus can be transmitted in climate. Right. So, I mean, I guess this part is not so much of a myth as just like kind of reinforcing the idea of the maintaining social distance for safety. One thing I'll say, when the hot weather, we're going into hot, sunny California, it is harder for people to maintain that mask safety. You're sweating, you're perspiring, and I think that's just kind of like what Sadia was pointing at, is when it's to the point where we become really lax and comfortable. That's usually we're going to start seeing slippage in our the good behavior that's gotten us this far. So I think just maintaining the safety measures that we're talking about, and still using those. So we're talking about using those safety measures and then adapting to a creative new norm. Your birthday dunk party for the 9-year-old, amazing.
Mhm.
Like, these are the kind of really creative, very amazing. And I have to say, as Muslims, Eid this year, correct me if I'm wrong, Eid this year was spectacular for a lot of people. I feel like we all found it to
Yes.
be we were forced to be creative,
And
intimate,
Ramadan in general.
make
Ramadan in
very
general.
meaningful interactions.
Mhm.
Yes, and
Mhm.
and it was basically an opportunity. It was like a test for Muslims to say, okay, this is our holiday of the year. What are we gonna do? And we were going around with our kids making Eid drop offs and seeing people from their door, and people were like, "You're the first visitor I've had in 3 months." These were interactions we got to have and experience. So I'm confident that we're gonna be able to maintain that social, like not be in social isolation, but doing it in our very creative 2020 way.
Next slide, please.
These are
Yep.
so like I said, these I found some of these myths on WHO. So yes, this was interesting because I hadn't even heard about this myth yet. But no, it does not. It's not effective, right?
Yes.
Yes. Washing your
I've
hands
actually
with
heard
soap
that
and
those hand
water
dryers.
is effective.
Mhm.
I actually don't
Yes.
recommend anyone using hand dryers over, tissue. So,
Sadia, I've
but
heard this from even
that's for
before,
another
like
time,
that those hand dryers,
right?
right? Those hand
Yeah,
dryers are like really notorious for like spreading. I mean, and when I read that, I'm like, oh, I'm
that's
not
what I've
using these
read.
ever
Yeah,
again.
yeah. I don't use
Yeah.
these at all. And these are also, Muna, go ahead.
So there can be asymptomatic carriers. Sorry, I just want to read this about the discomfort does not mean you are free of. Oh man, that's an awesome myth. Being able to hold your breath for 10 seconds or more without coughing or feeling discomfort does not mean you are free from the coronavirus. Correct. I mean, I don't know if I could do that right now. I don't know how much time we have on the air, but yeah, ultimately it's a respiratory virus, but with a very varying degrees of symptoms and symptomatology. We have skin and derm manifestations that we're seeing. We have vasculitis type of manifestations. We're seeing all sorts of different things, but fever is by and large, yes, definitely a consistent and respiratory symptoms. So cough, all of that, secretions, cough, and fevers are definitely, if you have them, please stay away from people and get tested.
I definitely wanted to wrap up with the myths because I'd heard some of those things, right? Like I feel when I was talking to Uzma earlier this week, Arizona is like 120 degrees. Like I would die if I lived there, to be honest with you. But she's saying the hospitals are overcrowded. So obviously this virus is alive and well. And that was one of the things I had heard. Like literally in the heat, it's going to go away and we're going to be fine. And people are becoming a little bit more lax. I think that there will be a spike in a couple of weeks. And I just read this morning that Beijing is going under lockdown again. So we're a couple of months behind some of these things that at some point, hopefully we'll learn and we can adapt. But the truth of the matter is, Uzma wants me to tell everybody elderberry does not cure corona. She is 100% right, but it does taste good. But she is 100% right. It doesn't cure corona, but it's something that we have to look for, that potentially that second wave can be a little bit more severe. And obviously as parents, this is kind of like the segue question I have is, what are we going to be able to do as far as distance learning? I know we're filling out some things right now for our school. How do you guys, what is your professional assessment about whether or not we're going to start school in the fall? And if you think no, then we're going to segue to Saba, is how am I not going to jump out of a window? So we're going to start with you, Muna, and let us know, like, what do you think? What do you think is the likelihood of starting back in the fall?
So, man, that is a very tough question. Definitely as a mom, that's on all of our minds. We have all been emailing our teachers to, first of all, thank them for this amazing last couple of months that they were thrust into, that they didn't want to be a part of. Like, nobody asked for that. And they did the best that they could. And then our kids have, done like, I call it Zoom fatigue. I'm sure other people do too. They've been through a lot. And now we're looking into the fall with a lot of hope, but a lot of uncertainty. So when we go into the fall, every school district has come out with very varying degrees. One thing I'm telling my friends is, let's see what the summer shows with our numbers and our cases. Number one. Number two, we should have both alternative plans ready for the fall. So distance learning that can presumably get us through winter, and smaller, more comfortable classrooms, indoor outdoor settings that can work for some kids. As you know, childcare is a huge reason people are in preschool. So these kids are now being paid. How can you reasonably ask someone to pay for a preschool and then also have full-time childcare because they're doing a distance learning preschool? So we have a lot to deal with, because it's like this is you're asking this from like the economy side, the workers side. So more people going back to work, they need more they need their kids in school, but they need them in school safely. So this is definitely like an adaptive process, and we're going to have to work with our educators to just to respect what is safe for the teachers as well as the kids. I know the parents are anxious, parents are antsy, but we got to do it right.
Muna, did you have anything to add?
Do you meant Sadia? I'm guessing.
Sadia.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Sadia, did you have anything to add, my dearest?
No, of course, yes, of course. I agree with what Muna said. This is something that's on all our minds. I have a lot of friends I have elementary school kids, and our school has made a committee about steering back to school in the fall, and CDC has put out a lot of guidelines. So you can go on their website and see if your school has all of those in place before they decide to open. And of course, same with the daycares. I know that the daycares have opened up in my area, and some of my friends are actually sending their kids back to daycare because, we have to work and there's no childcare available. Or if you want to prevent your parents because they're immunocompromised from your kids, so you have to send them to childcare. But there is a specific set of questions even on American Academy of Pediatrics, and there is CDC has a lot of information about going back to school. So definitely, it's a process that's going to take time. but it's all unknown for now.
So it's unknown. And that's the sad reality. I think we're all, I just wish I would know one way or the other so that, to your point, when parents are working or whatever, they can make the appropriate accommodations and it not happen the last minute. Because I do know, as far as, to segue into mental health a little bit, and to bring Saba she's so patiently been waiting here, so cute with her green outfit on. I love it.
Saba.
But she's so, it's something, Saba, thank you so much. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit? Because we're all in this phase, right? Like, I love having my kids at home, but I'm starting to see, like you said, the Zoom fatigue. We went outside and they happened to see some friends the other day, and then my son came inside and started crying. He was like, it feels so good. It feels weird to be normal. Right. And I didn't even realize that this bothered him so much because he's so quiet about it. But are you seeing a lot of that? I know you're probably so crazy busy right now with your practice. So what are the main things that you're seeing, and what are the things that you can kind of help guide us that we can help our kids specifically as we're kind of slowly going back to reality?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, Sadia and Mona. That was really helpful and actually useful for me as I myself am kind of, can you guys hear me? As I myself am making kind of those decisions and, kind of tackle this as well, both as a mom of 4, and my kids range from, I have a rising kindergartner to a rising freshman in high school. So we have all the ages now. We've got a kindergartner, elementary school, 2 elementary age, middle school, and high school. And it's been very interesting to see how all of them have been reacting. And I will say that in many ways, our kids have been doing really well, actually. Many kids have been doing okay. I see kids and adults in my practice. And so there's kind of a few observations, I guess. I think one, before we even talk about our kids in general, we always have to kind of recognize our own anxiety, our own, the impact of uncertainty on our own mental health and how we kind of are handling things or how we're feeling about things before we can even turn to and talk about our children's emotional health. It's been interesting because, if we're talking about coming from mid-March until just a few weeks ago, here in Michigan, I'm in Michigan, and we had the stay-at-home order. And it's actually kind of fascinating that just, all of a sudden we'll get like this news headline that, okay, starting from tomorrow, the governor has said that, gatherings of 100 or less are okay outside. And so it's crazy because it's like we've just been really used to this stay at home and total shutdown mode. And then slowly, well, it seems like it's not even always slowly that things are starting to open up. And what I've kind of been observing and seeing in my own patients, adults and kids, is there's actually adults that were doing okay. I mean, there was stress, there was definitely some anxiety, but there was a subset of kids and adults that were doing okay with the stay-at-home order. It was kind of like, I feel like it was because it was more black and white. Like, okay, stay home. We were figuring out different things, like how to get groceries and making sure that we have things, but we kind of adapted. But I almost feel like that phase was a little bit more clear, and in that sense, a little bit easier to handle than kind of what's coming now. And I've definitely seen that with some of the adults that I see. They're actually definitely kind of more anxious as we are kind of getting out and about. Just, they definitely are other people are, like kind of the precautions that other people are taking or not taking, really. And definitely every family has had a different experience. And actually, this is kind of where we even get into some of the differences in experiences based on kind of where you live, your geographical and socioeconomic. I mean, here, living in Detroit, we are like one of the most segregated cities in the country. And I definitely, and I've talked about this with other psychiatrists, other mental health professionals, you can really just by talking to people, you can really see a difference in, and this is kind of bringing in the my God, did I just say that? Black Lives Matter issues that, for example, my African-American patients, my Black patients have a very different experience of living through this time than other groups. And that really informs kind of how they are doing emotionally. So, for example, I saw a few new people this week, and so also being in Detroit, we have all the auto plants, And I had several adults that were really anxious about being back at work. Now the plants have been open for a few weeks. And what they were observing is like, hey, you know what? There's actually not that much social distancing in these workplaces. Not everybody is wearing a mask. I don't feel comfortable. I feel like anybody could just say, yeah, no one's been sick in my family, or I haven't gone anywhere, just to return to work. And I definitely had a few patients that were very anxious being back at work. It was definitely easier to, even with the financial difficulty, to kind of be at home. It's hard. And that kind of speaks to how this experience has been different for different families. Of course, some of the adult patients I have, they've actually had family members that have had the illness, that have been sick, they're hospitalized, that some that even passed away. So of course their reality is going to be really different than someone that was kind of very, honestly comfortable at home and weren't really facing this illness head on. And of course, that's going to inform the anxiety level in children as well, right? So really, again, just kind of recognizing your own anxiety as an adult, assessing your own situation if you are returning to work, and recognizing that anxiety, especially in this situation, is totally a normal response. Anxiety, we don't have to pathologize these emotions all the time. Sometimes they're telling us something. So if you are feeling anxious in a certain situation, I guess recognize that, this is definitely normal. It's kind of part of the process. I mean, there's nothing normal about this whole situation, but it's okay to have those feelings, and that sometimes those emotions are telling us something. So if your child is anxious in a certain situation, then not necessarily kind of brushing it under the rug, but realizing that this is, again, to be expected, and maybe a good thing. Like my oldest, it's really funny because he actually has really not complained at all. I think it was really good for him and many of our kids to be connected on social media. And I always complain about his video game usage, but honestly, being on Xbox and talking to his friends really helped him, I think. But we will be out, and he's the one that always has his mask ready. I'm kind of a little bit unorganized. So I'm like, where do we put our mask? What do we do? And he actually always has his mask. And one of the things that we started is, my kids are really into sports. I know, Zaba, you were saying that too. I am not putting them into any camps or anything. I don't really feel safe doing that. But one sport that we are doing that I feel is pretty low risk is tennis. And we used to do group lessons. And Sadia and Mona, you can, definitely jump in and let me know, your opinion on that. But, they're not doing group lessons anymore. So even like the rules are like, it's less than, you can only do at the most like 2 or 3 kids. It's just my 2 boys and their instructor. But even then on the tennis court, my oldest was like wearing his mask. And I was like, I think you're okay. I don't think you need to wear it outside. But just the fact that he was so conscientious about it, I was like, that's a good thing. So, yeah, let me see. So that was kind of the first thing. And then also the way that you as a family might be handling some things might be really different as another family. And that again is really informed by their experience through this whole thing. And, if they're on healthcare, if they've been out of the house, if they are exploratory control. And so every family is going to kind of deal with this in kind of their own way. And that's something that we've kind of all been dealing with too, is like, not necessarily, I wouldn't say judging, but sometimes that judgment can come in, but just realizing that every family has kind of their own comfort level. And it's also okay that if you are a little bit more stringent about maintaining certain rules, that's okay too. And you don't necessarily have to feel bad about that. I think also returning to society, part of that, still talking about adults, is even just adults, how we're socializing, how we socialize, and some of the, sometimes some of the, even the dynamics that we kind of deal with our groups of friends, as teenagers and adults, we're kind of like re-entering society. And some people have kind of become a little bit comfortable being a little bit of a hermit. So just recognizing that there's going to be some of those kind of interesting transitions as well. And also, just also if you have kids that deal with anxiety in social situations, realizing that they have not really had the exposure, they haven't really had the chance to, for many of them, kind of practice some of those social skills. And if they're already nervous in certain situations, you might definitely see an uptick in anxiety in the kids. So it's definitely normal to be excited to have like a range of emotions, a little bit of, optimism and some excitement, like, okay, maybe we can start doing a few little things, but then also definitely some anxiety about it. I know one thing with my youngest, it's been interesting to observe. I mentioned that she just finished preschool. She's going into kindergarten, and I've definitely noticed. So I've been working from home. My husband was home much more. Now he's kind of back in the clinic, but I definitely have noticed with my youngest one that she is definitely kind of more clingy, a little bit of separation, and she's usually the one that's really independent. I never really saw that much separation anxiety with her, but I'm definitely noticing that. So for some of us, if your kids are used to you being around all the time, and definitely they're out of their routine, they've been out of their routine, just kind of recognizing that might be something that you might see too. I've definitely noticed, even if I go across the street to get something from my neighbor from outside, like she is looking out, she's like, where are you going? When are you coming back? How long are you going to be there? And I'm like, I'm coming right back. But I definitely noticed that. So I guess questions, looking into why is going back to normal, or, kind of whatever our normal is, kind of a challenge for some people. And this is going to be kind of anxiety provoking for your child. So some concerns that some young people have had, this was based on a survey. There have been really some interesting surveys that have been looking at kind of the psychological impact every 2 weeks or so. They kind of do like different surveys every 2 weeks, and it's been interesting to see kind of the changes over that time. There's my phone. But basically grief or loss over changes in lifestyle for kids, like just that they didn't really have like a normal ending to their school year. And then actually for some kids, returning to some even pre-COVID-19 stressors, like certain interactions with friends. This might be more in the fall, but if they're returning back to school, some of them have had some bullying issues or some negative interactions at school. They might definitely have an uptick in anxiety as they anticipate returning back to some of those kind of those situations. Basically just the fact that we feel safe at home, even though there was this lockdown, that we were mostly home all the time. I know even as adults, we kind of felt that way, very comfortable and safe, and definitely kids feel that way too. So feeling very safe at home, and then kind of when you're going out in the public, it's definitely kind of more of an unsafe, that unsettling feeling for some kids, and kind of that things are just definitely out of your control when you're in public. Some kids are struggling with the idea that, definitely there isn't really going to be going back to normal for some time. The kids that are old enough to realize that. And sometimes you'll be surprised, even kids that you don't think are old enough to realize that they still might be talking to their friends. My 8-year-old talks to her cousins who are a little bit older, and a month ago, she was worried about what's going to happen in Halloween. What about New Year's? And I was just really surprised that we hadn't been talking that long term, but she'd been talking to her other, same age friends and cousins and things. And then just kind of definitely for all of us, there is that fear of kind of the second wave. If you've got kids that are old enough to realize that or recognize that, some kids might be kind of anticipating that. And definitely as adults, that's something that we're kind of worried about anticipating as well. So what can we do to support our kids that are a little bit worried, a little bit anxious? Again, it's really normal for your children and young people to kind of experience some of that re-entry anxiety. So what are some things that we can do? So one, I guess, with everything, it's important to ask questions and be curious about what your child's view is, what their worldview is, what do they know. Don't assume that they don't know anything, and don't assume that they know everything. Be open to ask questions and really listen to their point of view to understand kind of where they're coming from and their thoughts and feelings. And if you have multiple kids, I would definitely say having some of these conversations one-on-one. The way that I talk to, and I'm sure this is true for all of you, the way that I talk to my 13-year-old is definitely going to be very different than I had to talk to my 5-year-old and even 8 and 11-year-old. And then definitely normalize and validate their feelings. So, letting them know that what they're feeling is normal. That other people are feeling the same way, sharing with them, not overburdening them with your emotions, but letting them know that that we're kind of all in this together, and that we don't all know the answers, and that it's normal to be worried sometimes, and that worry is not always a bad thing. worry is something that helps us motivate us. If we had no anxiety, then we wouldn't have prepared to stay at home. We wouldn't have been preparing by making sure that we had enough, rice, and maybe with the toilet paper, some people overdid it. But, I remember I got made sure I had plenty of rice, and I had plenty of those basic items. If I wasn't worried at all, if any of us moms weren't worried at all, we wouldn't have been able to make sure that we had enough for our families. Right. So some worry is important and normal, and we need it. Limiting exposure to media. Now, I think this gets a little bit tricky with older kids. Only one of my kids has a cell phone, and he's always on it, which I believe is normal, I guess, to some extent. But, sometimes maybe checking in with them and seeing what are they talking about? What are their friends saying? Are they, what information are they getting? Even if what information are they getting from TikToks or, whatever. And I think another really important step is kind of creating a plan around transitioning. So for all of us, we're not, just like Mona said, I really like that, Mona, we're not going from 0 to 60 here. We're definitely going to take things gradually, even if your county or your state is allowing, like I said, overnight in Michigan, it was okay, you can get together with 100 people. I don't think that it's also that could actually increase the kids' anxiety a little bit and actually make it a little bit confusing. So doing things kind of gradually, outdoor, mixed message. It gives them kind of a mixed message. So outdoor gatherings, and then as much as we can, try definitely with the masking. I know that I need to do a little bit better with that with some of the gatherings myself. So thank you, girls, ladies, for the reminder. And it's important too, especially for teenagers. Many of them are ready to kind of get out and kind of be with their friends. And, we can't, now we're realizing that we all need this. We need the social interaction. Even the term social distancing, maybe it was a kind of a misnomer. We could have called it physical distancing. We definitely need people, and they need to interact with their friends too. So what are gradual things that they can do? I think, Zaba, you were saying, and I've heard other parents saying that they're allowing sometimes their kids to see some very few friends outside. And maybe reminding them with physical reminders, having their chairs set up, or having tape or something, just so because they have an idea of what really, how much distance that they should have. As you guys all know, it's really easy when you do get together, and this is something to keep in mind too, is that when you do start seeing people, it's really easy to kind of fall back into our old habits that that were very normal pre-COVID. I had somebody accidentally, my son's graduation, we were all kind of distancing, but someone said hi, and they actually reached to shake my hand, and we were like, oh, sorry, so it's really easy when you're with people, it's very easy to forget. So recognize that with teenagers especially. So creating a plan around transitioning, and really taking, again, small steps to kind of reintegrate. And then some fears can kind of be alleviated with that too. So maybe having a plan, okay, as a family, we are going to go out to the park, and explaining to them kind of why, this, we're kind of taking these steps. It seems to be okay, but what we're still doing, it's not like a normal day or a normal time at the park. We're still going to, if we're going with another family, we're still going to maintain that distancing, and really kind of explaining it, especially to your younger kids, and really kind of problem solving together. I guess with your kids that are a little bit old enough to talk about it. And I agree with you, Mona. I've been really amazed and astounded by just the creativity and how people have, with Ramadan and Eid was wonderful. I think it was an amazing break for us as Muslims. It was a beautiful Ramadan, very different than anything that we've ever experienced, but there was a lot of creativity and thought that was put into that too. And I'm also seeing that with graduations. I know many people were mourning kind of the loss of those normal transitions and end of the year celebrations that we usually have. But seeing kind of the way that people are celebrating has been really heartwarming and very special, I think, for these kids in a very different way. So yeah, those are the kind of the main things. And then I guess the other thing is, kind of knowing the difference between normal behavior and kind of concerning behavior. So some of the normal impacts, there's going to be a psychological impacts from this quarantine. And I think someone had asked too, are there going to be any long-term effects for kids after this quarantine is over? That's kind of hard to say, because it depends on where your child is coming from. their baseline, like their temperament, if they kind of already are a little bit on the anxious side, and also kind of how how you're explaining things, how you kind of like help to kind of address that. But there will be some short-term kind of changes, like confusion, anger, some anxiety, some sadness, and then that's okay. And some of these are, again, normal. Also, sleep disturbances. Sometimes I know a lot of people are talking about dreams and like these pandemic type. A lot of people are having some very bizarre dreams, especially in the beginning. And now it seems like a lot of kids are sleeping very well. I know my son grew 3 inches over quarantine, and I think it's because he was able to actually sleep in. And then some long-term behavior changes might be normal too, like changes in hygiene practices. Like my kids are really good now about, washing and making sure we have hand sanitizer when we go out. Now, what are some concerning impacts? So most children, we think and we know are going to bounce back and recover kind of in their own time. But, for some other kids and even adults, there can be some, it might trigger some type of like kind of acute stress disorder type of reaction, or like for some people, some PTSD type of symptoms in some people. And this is definitely something I don't anticipate most kids are definitely going to deal with this, but it's something to kind of, just know about, I guess, and keep an eye out for. And that's basically just kind of a trauma response, which is a response to a deeply distressing or disturbing event that really, the main crux is that it really overwhelms your ability to cope at all times. And so that would be like intense feelings of fear, helplessness, horror, kind of like just almost like if you are like paralyzed to do any, like you're kind of in a state of paralysis. And you just, for individuals, it can really mean like a threat to their safety. And this could happen really if they're witnessing the suffering of others, if there has been like a big loss in the family. And definitely this is kind of something that's a little bit more of a challenge. So if you do think that your child's reaction is a little bit more extreme and above and beyond of what's expected for the situation, then it might be a good time or a good idea to reach out and maybe get in touch with a therapist or a mental health professional, and basically kind of give your child that space and that chance to talk to somebody else about what's going on, and with someone that's really trained in kind of how to talk to kids and how to help kids through these situations. So I think that's pretty much it. So basically, and I think over the summer, that's going to be another challenge, but helping kids, helping maybe brainstorming with kids, what are things that we can do this summer? The summer is going to be a little bit different. But also kind of allowing them that space and that break too. This was a really difficult end of the school year. I know definitely we were very busy, and I was really upset with my kids for being on electronics too much yesterday. My husband had to be like, okay, we all just survived the school year. Just give them a break now. I'm like, okay, fine. Tiger Mom will step back. So those are just a few things. Sorry, I kind of went on.
No, I definitely appreciate it, and I always welcome your input, just because I do realize that we as moms are doing the best that we can, right? Like you're saying right now with the video game usage. I mean, honestly, I'm like, if you guys here's your chart, you get all this stuff done. Like right now, they're literally like, can we buy another game? And I literally am like, thumbs up. Get it done, as long as you get your stuff done, because the truth of the matter is that is how you touched upon, that is how the older kids are actually socializing with each other, right? They do that through the video games.
Yeah.
And once I understood that piece of it, I realized that it was one of those things where you kind of have to let them be. And honestly, what I'm noticing, and you have older kids too, is that the older kids, one, are handling this 10 times better than I thought they were going to handle it, to be honest with you. And two, they're really kind of going into their own individual space. And it used to be that I was like, what are you guys up to? And why are you doing? And then finally my daughter was like, listen, Mom, we like being able to like go to the end of, into our quarters, do our thing, and then come in together as a family, because that constant togetherness as much as we all love
Yeah.
each other, everybody needed to go into their own separate
yeah.
quarters. So I'm as a mom respecting the fact that they all need to do their own individual things and have their own alone time, and respect that as well, because quite frankly,
sure.
I'm sitting on the porch right now because it is really loud in my house inside. So we all need it. So I definitely appreciate everything that you guys all were saying. I know we had a lot of questions coming in. It seems like, right now, the last question we had was, are we going to have any long-term effects for kids after this quarantine is over? And it sounds like from a medical and a mental or emotional perspective, we don't know, right? And what's going on, it really is about like how we as parents are handling our own stress and anxiety, is what I'm hearing from you, Saba. And that's kind of, our kids are going to kind of play on that a little bit. And so we're going to have some resources, I know, up at the end of this. I just wanted to thank you ladies for taking your time. I know Sadia is literally at work right now, in between rounding, on the front lines, coming. And I'm definitely praying for all you guys to be healthy and safe during this quarantine summer. I know we normally, I saw a little kid go through the back room. Oh my God, it's like, I just want to like hug these babies, because really they're all handling it as well as they can. And inshallah, next year, we'll have a different experience. And maybe this is what we're going to have to look back on and realize we had to go through this in order to grow and become the people we're supposed to be. And perhaps this is what COVID-19 is for all of us. I'm going to choose to think of it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you,
sure.
everybody,
I mean,
for
I think-
joining us
Yeah.
today on this special episode
There's a reason that we're living
of
through this.
Mommyingwhilemuslim. Exactly. There's a reason for this. That's ultimately what I believe.
Thank
So
you so much
when you
for
think
having
about
us.
it, you're like, the earth is
Mhm.
healing. We're all doing it. We're all doing the best that we can. Thank you, ladies, from literally East Coast to the West Coast today. I definitely appreciate it.